4:17 in the morning. Your tongue is stuck to the roof of your mouth, and you tell yourself it's just the dry bedroom air. You drank a full glass of water before bed. You even keep a second glass on the nightstand now. And still, night after night, you wake up parched, cotton-mouthed, reaching for water like a person who crossed a desert in their sleep. Here's what almost no one over 60 has been told: that morning thirst is very often not about the water you drank the night before. For many older adults, it is the earliest external signal of something happening deep inside the body, in the pancreas, in the kidneys, in the hormone system, that decides how much of your body's water you keep overnight. And the reason it gets ignored for months, sometimes years, is that everyone around you keeps saying the same three words. It's just age. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that dry mouth after 60 can be pointing to, and what it almost never is. And I want to be clear about who this is for. If you are past 60, if you wake up thirsty more nights than not, if you find yourself getting up to use the bathroom in the small hours, and then reaching for the glass, this concerns your body specifically. Because the people who get hurt by this symptom are not the ones with dramatic thirst. They are the ones with the quiet, easy to explain away version. The kind that hides behind a dry radiator or one salty meal, until the underlying condition has had 18 months to advance unnoticed. And 18 months is not a number I chose for drama. It is roughly the window that researchers who study the natural history of type 2 diabetes describe between the moment blood sugar begins to drift out of range and the moment a routine test finally catches it. In that gap, nothing hurts. That is exactly why it is dangerous. Pain brings people to the doctor. A dry mouth at 4 in the morning brings people to the nightstand, and then back to sleep. So here is exactly what I'm going to walk you through. First, the difference between ordinary nighttime dryness and the thirst that signals something metabolic, and the one detail about timing that tells them apart. Second, the connection between morning thirst and blood sugar that stays high while you sleep, the pattern that health authorities describe as the classic early face of type 2 diabetes. Third, the reason your kidneys and one specific overnight hormone are at the center of this, and why aging quietly changes the way your body handles water after midnight. Fourth, the blood pressure and heart medications that can produce this exact symptom as a side effect, so that you never confuse a drug reaction for a disease. And fifth, the one I want you to stay for most, because it is the one hiding in plain sight in your own bedroom, disguised as a snore. And it is the reason so many people fix the water problem and never fix the thing underneath it. Let me tell you where I come from on this. I built this channel, The Longevity Table, to translate the medical and nutritional research that gets locked behind journal paywalls into plain language for adults over 60. I am not your doctor, and nothing here replaces the person who actually examines you. What I do is read the studies carefully and bring you what they actually say, cited, so you can walk into your next appointment asking sharper questions. This video is educational only. Please treat it that way. And please, on anything I raise today, talk to your own healthcare professional. Now let me start with a scene, because I think you will recognize yourself in it. Consider a man I'll call Harold. He is 71. He lives outside Columbus in the same house he raised 3 children in. For most of his life, he slept straight through the night. Then, sometime around his 68th birthday, a pattern crept in. He would wake around 3 or 4 in the morning, mouth completely dry, get up, drink half a glass of water, use the bathroom, and go back to bed. His wife noticed he was leaving a water glass on the nightstand where he never used to. Harold explained it the way most people explain it. The furnace runs dry in winter. He'd had chips with dinner. He was getting older, and old people, everyone knows, just don't sleep as deeply. For a year and a half, that was the whole story. Dry mouth, a glass of water, back to sleep. He did not think of it as a symptom, because it did not hurt, it did not frighten him, and it had 100 innocent explanations. What Harold did not know is that persistent, unexplained thirst is one of the recognized early signs of high blood sugar. According to the Mayo Clinic's description of type 2 diabetes, increased thirst and frequent urination are among the hallmark symptoms, and they can develop so gradually that a person lives with them for years before anything is measured. The mechanism, as the National Library of Medicine's Medline Plus explains, is that in type 2 diabetes, The body either does not make enough insulin or does not use it well, so glucose builds up in the blood instead of moving into the cells. And here is the part worth slowing down on, because it is the engine of the whole symptom. Your kidneys filter your entire blood volume many times a day, and normally they reabsorb essentially all of the glucose that passes through, so none of it ends up in your urine. But there is a ceiling. Once your blood sugar climbs past roughly 180 milligrams per deciliter, the transport proteins in the kidney tubules that pull glucose back into the blood become saturated. They simply run out of capacity. The excess sugar spills over into the urine, and because sugar is osmotically active, it drags water molecules along with it. Doctors call this osmotic diuresis. In plain terms, the sugar in your urine acts like a sponge, pulling water out of your body and into the bladder. You urinate more, and it is a larger volume than usual. You lose fluid you did not intend to lose. And your body, quite correctly, screams for you to replace it. You wake up thirsty. The thirst is not a malfunction. It is your body doing exactly the right thing in response to a slow, invisible drain. That is the part that gets missed. Harold thought the thirst was the problem. The thirst was the alarm. The problem was 3 feet lower and running quietly for 18 months. By the time a routine blood test finally caught it, his fasting numbers had been drifting upward for a long time. And consider what those 18 silent months cost him in real terms. High blood sugar does not wait politely for a diagnosis to begin doing damage. It is already at work on the smallest blood vessels, the ones feeding the retina at the back of the eye, the fine filtering units of the kidney, the tiny nerves in the feet. This is why so many people are told at the very appointment where they first learn they have diabetes that they already have early signs of nerve tingling or a change in their vision. The disease had a head start, and the head start was measured in the number of mornings they reached for the glass and called it dry air. Harold is not unusual. Harold is close to typical, and the single move he made for a year and a half, drinking the water and going back to sleep, is the same move a great many people over 60 are making right now, tonight, without knowing what it might be answering. So let me explain the mechanism plainly, because once you understand it, you will never hear your own dry mouth the same way again. Your body does something clever at night that most people have never thought about. During the day, you drink, you urinate, you regulate. But when you sleep for 7 or 8 hours, you obviously cannot get up to drink every hour. So your body has a system to concentrate your urine overnight and hold on to water so you don't dehydrate in your sleep and don't have to keep waking to empty your bladder. The lever it uses is a hormone. In the evening, the body is supposed to release more of a water-retaining hormone called vasopressin, also known as anti-diuretic hormone, which tells the kidneys to pull water back and make less urine while you rest. The way it works is precise. Vasopressin travels to the kidney and instructs specific cells in the collecting ducts to insert tiny water channels, proteins called aquaporins, into their walls. Think of them as doors that open to let water flow back out of the forming urine and into the body. When vasopressin is high, those doors open, water is reclaimed, and your overnight urine becomes small in volume and highly concentrated. When vasopressin is low, the doors stay shut, the water passes straight through, and you produce a large volume of dilute urine that fills your bladder and wakes you. Here's where age enters, and here's the detail almost no one explains. That overnight system is under the control of your internal body clock, your circadian rhythm, and both the clock and the hormone weaken with age. A 2025 review in Nature Reviews Urology describes how nighttime urine overproduction is tied to disruption of that circadian control, including reduced nighttime release of vasopressin and of melatonin. In plain terms, the evening signal that is supposed to say to your kidneys, hold the water, make less urine, gets quieter as you get older. The healthy young body pushes the bulk of its urine production into the daytime hours and throttles it back at night. The aging body loses that clean separation. The rhythm flattens. More of the day's fluid processing slides into the overnight window, precisely when you are least able to respond to it. And a 2020 study in the journal Toxins describes the kidney itself as a highly active site of circadian rhythm regulation and links disruption of those rhythms to kidney trouble. So the kidney is not just a passive filter. It runs on a clock with genes inside its own cells that switch on and off across the 24-hour cycle, and that clock can drift. Now put the two things together. If your overnight water-holding hormone drops, you make more urine at night, you lose more fluid while you sleep, and you wake up, right on cue, dry. A real-world study published in 2026 in the Journal of Urology found that a vasopressin-type medication effectively treated nighttime urine overproduction in men aged 60 and older, which tells you something important. It tells you that in many older adults, the shortage of that overnight hormone is real, it is measurable, and it is treatable. Think about what that means. If the missing hormone can be supplemented and the problem improves, then the problem was never simply old age to be endured. It was a specific, correctable gap in a specific system. So when you wake at 4 in the morning parched, part of what may be happening is not that your bedroom is dry. It is that your body's midnight water conservation system has quietly lost some of its strength. And the Endocrine Society, in a 2023 scientific statement on hormones and aging, specifically reviews these age-related changes in how the older body handles water. This is documented. This is known. This is not you being dramatic, which brings us back to Harold. His thirst was the visible tip of two things at once. Blood sugar drifting up, pulling water out through his kidneys by osmotic diuresis, and an aging overnight hormone system holding on to less water than it did at 50 because his vasopressin rhythm had flattened. Two mechanisms, one symptom, and both of them completely silent except for that glass on the nightstand. And notice how the two can reinforce each other. The high blood sugar increases urine volume through the sugar spillover. The weakened vasopressin rhythm fails to counteract it. Each one alone might have been mild enough to explain away. Together, they produced a thirst reliable enough that Harold's wife noticed the glass before Harold ever thought to mention it to a doctor. Let me give you 3 more people, because I want you to find yourself somewhere in here. The first is a woman I'll call Dorothy, 64, a retired school teacher in Georgia. Her thirst was not dramatic at all, just a slightly sticky mouth most mornings and a habit of finishing a glass before coffee. What made Dorothy different is that she also noticed she was more tired than she used to be, and that a small cut on her ankle took a strangely long time to heal. She put the tiredness down to age, and the slow healing down to bad luck. But the Mayo Clinic lists increased thirst, fatigue, and slow healing sores together as a cluster among the symptoms of type 2 diabetes. And each of those 3 has the same root cause once you understand the mechanism. The fatigue is not laziness or age. It is her cells starving in the middle of plenty because the glucose she needs for energy is stuck in the bloodstream, unable to get through the door insulin is supposed to open. The slow healing cut is not bad luck. High blood sugar thickens and stiffens the smallest blood vessels and blunts the immune cells that clean and rebuild a wound. So the ankle that would have closed in a week in her 40s now takes 3 or 4. Individually, each one is easy to dismiss. Together, they are a pattern, and the pattern points at one underlying problem. Dorothy's lesson is that this symptom rarely travels alone. If your morning thirst has quiet company, more fatigue, more nighttime bathroom trips, blurry vision that comes and goes, that combination is worth a conversation with your doctor and a simple blood test. Not a shrug. And that comes and goes blurry vision is its own small clue, because it happens when high blood sugar pulls fluid into the lens of the eye and changes its shape, then relaxes when the sugar drops. Vision that shifts with no clear reason is the eye reporting on the blood. The second is a man I'll call Ray, 76, in Arizona. Ray's story is the one I most want you to hear, because Ray did nothing wrong and still got confused, and it nearly cost him. Ray takes medication for high blood pressure. Specifically, he was put on a diuretic, a water pill. Now, according to the Mayo Clinic, diuretics work by helping the body get rid of salt and water through the urine, which lowers blood pressure. That is exactly what they are supposed to do. The logic is straightforward. Less fluid in the vessels means less pressure pushing against the vessel walls, the same way letting some water out of an overfull garden hose eases the strain on it. But a completely predictable consequence of taking a medication that makes you shed water is that you can end up drier and thirstier than you were before. The very mechanism that lowers his numbers is a mechanism that removes fluid, and removed fluid is thirst. Ray woke up parched every morning and did the reasonable thing. He assumed the worst, spiraled about diabetes for weeks, and lost sleep over it, which of course is its own harm, because the worry itself was stealing the rest he needed. When he finally raised it with his doctor, the answer was much simpler. His thirst pattern lined up almost to the week with the day he had started the water pill. The point of Ray's story is not that thirst never matters. It is that if you started a new blood pressure or heart medication and the thirst arrived with it, you may be looking at a manageable side effect, and the worst thing you can do is guess in either direction. You do not stop a prescribed medication on your own, because stopping a blood pressure drug abruptly can be genuinely dangerous, and you do not silently panic. You tell the person who prescribed it. You give them the timeline, the exact week it started. Let them sort the drug from the disease, because they can, quickly, and often the fix is as small as adjusting a dose or the time of day you take it. The third is the surprising one, and it sets up the item I promised you would want to stay for. Call him Frank, 69, a big cheerful man whose wife had been elbowing him about his snoring for a decade. Frank's morning thirst had nothing to do with sugar and nothing to do with his kidney's hormone clock. Frank's mouth was dry every morning for a mechanical reason, and it is the reason hiding in the most ordinary sound in the house. So let me give you exactly what to do about all of this, in order. Starting with the most time-sensitive. The first move is to separate a dry bedroom from a dry body. This one is free, and you can do it tonight. If the thirst were only about air, humidifying the room or breathing through your nose would largely fix it, and it would not come with any other signs. So track it for 1 week. Keep a small notebook or a note on your phone by the bed. Each morning, before you are fully awake and forget, note whether the thirst came alone or with company, more bathroom trips, unusual fatigue, blurred vision, and while you were at it, whether your throat felt raw or your mouth was hanging open when you woke. If it is truly just dry winter air, the pattern will be inconsistent and isolated. It will track with how cold the night was and whether the furnace ran hard. If it shows up night after night with companions, regardless of the weather, you have moved out of the humidifier category and into the get it checked category. That single week of noticing is the most valuable thing you can do, because it turns a vague feeling into information your doctor can use. A doctor can do a great deal with the sentence, "It happens every night, twice, with 2 bathroom trips," and much less with the sentence, "I've just been thirsty lately." The second move, and please do this within the next couple of weeks if the thirst is persistent, is to get your blood sugar checked. Not because I am telling you that you have diabetes, I am not, and I cannot. But because increased thirst is, per both the Mayo Clinic and the National Library of Medicine, one of the classic early signs of high blood sugar, and the only way to rule it in or out is a simple, cheap, fast blood test. Ask your doctor for a fasting glucose test, which measures your blood sugar after you have not eaten overnight, or the longer-term measure, the hemoglobin A1C, which shows your average blood sugar over roughly the past 3 months by looking at how much sugar has attached itself to your red blood cells. That second test is powerful precisely because it cannot be gamed by one careful day of eating. It reports the whole quarter. If you have been drinking from that nightstand glass for a year, like Harold, this is the appointment that matters most. High blood sugar caught early is a very different situation than high blood sugar found after 18 silent months. Because in the early window, the damage to those small vessels and nerves has not yet had time to set in, and for many people, the whole trajectory can be changed with steps far less drastic than they fear. The third move is to bring your medication list to that same appointment. Write down everything you take, the doses, and roughly when you started each one, including the blood pressure pills, and specifically flag anything that is a diuretic or water pill. Common names patients recognize include the ones ending in a way your pharmacist can confirm, but you do not need to memorize chemistry. You need to point at the list and ask directly, could my thirst be coming from this? As Ray learned, diuretics are designed to make you shed water, so thirst can be a straightforward consequence rather than a warning sign. The timeline is the key that unlocks it. If the thirst began within a week or two of a new prescription, that is a story a doctor can read instantly. But you do not diagnose that yourself, and you never ever stop a prescribed medication on your own to test a theory, because with heart and blood pressure drugs, stopping can be more dangerous than the symptom that worried you. You let the professional connect the timeline. The fourth move addresses the overnight hormone system we talked about. If your main issue is waking to urinate and then feeling dry, tell your doctor about the timing, because as that 2025 urology review and the 2026 treatment study describe, nighttime urine overproduction in older adults is a recognized, studied problem tied to that weakening overnight water conservation signal, and it is something a physician can evaluate and, for many people, address. There are practical things worth mentioning too, that a good doctor will ask about, whether you are drinking a great deal in the evening, whether swelling in your legs during the day is being reabsorbed and processed as urine once you lie down flat at night, whether the timing suggests the hormone rhythm rather than the bladder itself. This is not something to be embarrassed about, and it is not something to simply endure as the price of getting older. Bring it up specifically. Say the words, "I wake up at night to urinate and then I'm thirsty, and it happens most nights." Those exact words point your doctor at the right system instead of leaving them to guess. And the fifth move is the one I told you to wait for, the one hiding in your own bedroom, disguised as a snore. Think back to Frank. For a very large number of older adults, morning dry mouth is caused by breathing through an open mouth all night. And the most common reason for that is disrupted breathing during sleep. The National Library of Medicine notes that snoring is common, especially among older people, and can be a sign of sleep apnea, a condition in which breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep. Here is what is actually happening in that bed. As you fall into deeper sleep, the muscles that hold your airway open relax. In a person with apnea, they relax too far, and the soft tissue at the back of the throat collapses inward like a wet paper straw, narrowing or completely blocking the passage. The snore is the sound of air being forced through that narrowed gap. When it closes entirely, breathing stops for seconds at a time, oxygen dips, and the brain, sensing danger, jolts the body into a brief partial waking to reopen the airway with a gasp. This can happen dozens, even hundreds of times a night, and through all of it, the mouth falls open to grab whatever air it can. That is why you dry out completely and you wake up parched, exactly like a metabolic thirst would feel, except the cause is mechanical. And here is why aging makes this worse. A 2017 randomized trial protocol in the journal Trials explains that sleep apnea arises when the muscles of the upper airway relax during sleep, and that aging involves a loss of muscle at the motor unit level. The very same muscle loss you feel in your grip and your legs, the loss doctors call sarcopenia, is also happening in your throat, and a weaker airway is a more collapsible airway. A study in the journal Sleep back in 2000 looked at how sleep apnea events change with age, examining people up to 88 years old. So this is not a young person's condition, and it is not only a condition of the very overweight, which is the stereotype that keeps thin older people from ever being tested. It rides along with getting older, because getting older is, in part, a slow loss of the muscle tone that keeps the throat open. And it matters far beyond the dry mouth. Every one of those oxygen dips is a stress on the heart. Every one of those micro-awakenings robs you of the deep, restorative stages of sleep, which is why apnea sufferers can spend 9 hours in bed and wake as exhausted as if they had slept 4. A 2020 study in Mechanisms of Aging and Development examined whether poor self-rated sleep quality is linked to elevated inflammation markers in healthy older adults in their 60s. Poor sleep is not just tiredness. It has downstream effects on the body, on blood pressure, on mood, on how the body handles sugar the very next day, which loops right back to the first thing we discussed. So the reason the fifth item is the one I most wanted you to reach is this. If your thirst is really coming from apnea and mouth breathing, you can drink all the water on the nightstand you want and never touch the actual cause. You will fix the symptom and leave the disease running all night, every night, quietly straining your heart and stealing your rest. If your dry mouth comes with loud snoring, with gasping your spouse has mentioned, with morning headaches, with waking up unrefreshed no matter how long you slept, do not treat that as a thirst problem. Treat it as a breathing problem and bring it to your doctor as one. Because a sleep study can confirm it, an effective treatment exists. Here is the advanced point almost no one connects, and I want to give it to you because it is the difference between chasing symptoms and understanding your own body. Every one of these causes, the blood sugar, the overnight hormone, the collapsing airway, is quietly worsened by the same underlying thing, which is disruption of your body's natural day-night rhythm. The kidney runs on that clock. The vasopressin release runs on that clock. Your sleep depth and your airway tone run on that clock. Even your body's sensitivity to insulin has a daily rhythm, tending to be better in the morning and worse at night, which is one reason a late, heavy meal spikes blood sugar more than the same meal at noon. As that 2020 toxins review makes clear, the kidney is one of the most rhythm-driven organs you have. So when I ask a viewer over 60 about morning thirst, I am really asking about their whole overnight system. The move, then, is not to treat the glass on the nightstand as the destination. The move is to protect the clock. Consistent sleep and wake times, even on weekends, because the clock does not know it is Saturday. Real morning light within an hour of waking, because bright light in the morning is the single strongest signal that resets and sharpens the whole rhythm. A dark, cool room at night, because both darkness and a slight drop in temperature are the cues your body reads to release the hormones that deepen sleep. And a frank conversation with your doctor about anything that repeatedly wakes you. If you fix the rhythm, you often stop treating 4 separate symptoms and start treating one system. This does not replace testing for diabetes or evaluating for apnea. It sits underneath all of it, as the foundation the other systems are built on. So let me bring this back to where we started, to that 4 in the morning glass of water. If you take one thing from this, take this. Morning thirst after 60 is not a verdict, and it is not nothing. For some, it is high blood sugar drifting up in silence, the way the Mayo Clinic and the National Library of Medicine describe the early phase of type 2 diabetes. For some, it is an aging overnight hormone system that no longer holds water the way it did at 50, documented in the urology and endocrine research we covered. For some, it is a blood pressure medication doing exactly its job. And for a great many, it is the sound coming from the other side of the bed, the snore that is really a breathing problem in disguise. The dangerous move is the one Harold made for a year and a half. Drink the water, go back to sleep. Call it age. The protective move costs you 1 week of paying attention and 1 honest appointment. Do not diagnose yourself from a video, mine included. Take these 5 things to the person who can actually test you. If this helped you understand your own body a little better, do the one thing that helps this channel reach the next person who wakes up thirsty at 4 in the morning and thinks it's nothing. Give it a like, and subscribe to the longevity table so the next warning finds you in time. I'll see you at the next one.